meeting you right where you are on your foster care journey. This is the Forgotten Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Forgotten Podcast. I'm your host, Jamie Cabe, and I am so happy to be with you. If you are part of the foster care community, passionate about serving, or simply interested in learning more, we are here for you. In every episode of this podcast, you will hear stories from men and women who have experienced foster care to one degree or another. They may have grown up in the system, are caseworkers, foster parents, or others who are here to bring you hope or encouragement. If you enjoy this podcast, please subscribe and share it with a friend. And remember, you are not alone. I hope you enjoy the Forgotten Podcast. Josh, it's so good to have you here at TFI. We often say awareness leads to action. And this is really true of your story, isn't it?
Yeah. You know, when my wife and I went to Mexico back in 2009, we worked with different orphanages down there, and we really watched each other interact with these different kids. And just knowing that there are kids without homes, you know, I grew up in a two-parent household. I didn't see that a lot. And so seeing it in another country and then coming back and hearing some of the statistics and things like that from our hometown was, you know, that raised that awareness for us. And so we knew we had to do something. We didn't know, you know, back then, you know, we were young. We didn't know if we wanted to adopt or be missionaries or what we wanted to do. Yeah. But eventually my wife brought up foster care, and, you know, that's kind of where we've gotten to now.
Do you remember when she first brought it up? I mean, was it kind of like, what was your response? And what was your response?
Yeah, we were married. It was 2015, living out in California. And I remember her saying, we should do foster care. And she explained it to me. I had no idea what it was. She explained it to me, and I was like, I don't know if I want to do that, because how am I supposed to just love this kid and then send them back home? I was like, if the goal is reunification, like, they're coming obviously out of a horrible environment, why would I want to send them back? And so that was my initial reaction, was, heck no, I don't want to do this. I don't think this is what we're called to do. But, you know, she really urged me in that direction. She actually got a job at a foster care agency when we moved back to Ohio. Yeah. And so once she got there and started learning more and started to teach me, you know, then I was a little more, you know, it was through education really that helped me get to the point where I was.
Wow, that's so cool. I've got to step back just a little bit. So you moved from California to Ohio. Like, what were you thinking?
Yeah, so my wife and I we're from Ohio, from the Cincinnati area.
Well, that makes a little more sense.
Yep, the military took us out there. So I was in the military for 4 years. And after my enlistment, we tossed around the idea of, do I want to stay in? Do I want to get out? And, you know, we'll start a family and settle down. And that's what we decided to do.
Yeah. No, we live in Illinois, and it's kind of very, very much the same. We say everywhere we go is a vacation. That's the benefit. And there's nothing like being home, right?
Right. All of our families here, our friends are here.
Yeah.
And
that's awesome.
Especially with our two biological kids, you know, before we started fostering, it was really nice to drop them off at grandma's house for the weekend or something like that, and actually have a date and spend some time together. So it's been really nice.
Yes. That's awesome. Yes. Just in the Illinois and Ohio winters, I would imagine California feels a little, you kind of miss that.
Yeah. 75 and sunny all the time. Or better.
Amazing.
If you can imagine better than that. No humidity. Your shirt doesn't stick to you when you walk outside in the summer. None of that.
Wow. Wow. But no family was there.
Exactly. And that's why we had to move back. We're big family people.
Yeah. That's awesome. So you talked about how, as your wife got into the field of foster care and she started educating you, what do you think it was that opened you? I mean, I know obviously it was just getting to know it more, but was there anything that you remember that kind of shifted your perspective of like, maybe we could do this?
Yeah, once I learned that it is much better for children that are in foster care to reunify with their biological families, that's what really helped me out, because initially my thought was, these are just horrible parents that can't take care of their kids, and so now I have to do it, which was totally uneducated. Yeah. And
Yeah.
so when I started working through the education of that and learning that they're better off in their homes, that doesn't make you a better parent or anything like that. That's when it really started to hit me. And I thought to myself, man, imagine if we could have these children in our home while the families get better and help come alongside them and help them out in this and, break this cycle, because it's such a cyclical thing. And, it repeats as well. Kids could go back home and then the parents may not get the resources and the education they need. Then the kids go right back into foster care. So we thought to ourselves, maybe this is something and a need that we can fill in our area that would really help out. We may not see the change right away, but a generation from now, when they start having kids, that's when they're really going to see the effect.
Wow. I love that long-term perspective. I think that's super important in life in general with our kids, with the hard things we're going through, right? It's so easy to be focused on what's right in front of us, but God sees a much bigger perspective. So when he gives us the grace to have more of a long-term perspective, that's helpful.
Yeah, he really does. And speaking of long-term perspective, we have 2 biological little ones in our house right now, a 3-year-old and a 5-month-old. And thinking about the long term, the more I learn about the brain, the more I learn about parenting in a connected way. It's definitely not something that you see the results of right away. We have conversations with our kids over and over and over about the same thing, and they don't make the change right away. But then a few weeks go by, and then a month goes by. And then with our 3-year-old, a year goes by, and we start to see the effects of the things we did when he was little. And so it is really cool. And I think that's definitely helped me out with a long-term perspective.
I love that. It reminds me of myself as well, because I was going through a pretty tough time several months back. And finally, it kind of hit me that I was wearing these burdens that God hadn't intended me to wear. And I remember thinking, okay, maybe what did I learn? I had learned something, and I made a statement like, I can't even think about it right. I can't even remember right now. I'm going blank. But the whole point is, I had remembered something. I made a statement about it. I thought it was a brand new lesson. And then not that long after, I saw our Forgotten Initiative page pop up, and apparently I had written the exact same statement. There was a quote from me on the page from a couple of years before. So I'm like, man, I clearly forgot that lesson because I thought it was amazing.
Yeah, it's funny how that works.
It is. It also makes me think, man, we have been watching some old videos of our kids. My oldest now is 18. And we were watching videos just last night of when she was 5, and our next one was 3, and then we had a 1-year-old. And it's so crazy to look back. And you're in the thick of that young parenting right now. And yet we're also going to talk about, you actually have some older kids in your home as well. But man, enjoy the season. And it just changes. There's good and hard in every season, for sure. So you then kind of got open to this idea of foster care, but then you really your heart was open to something that a lot of people are not open to, which is teenagers in foster care. How did that come about?
Yeah, originally, we weren't talking about teenagers. And really, a part of our story is that we went to get licensed originally, and then my wife found out that she was pregnant with our first son, and we said, maybe we should hold off a little bit. And then after a couple of years, we decided again that, hey, we should go through with this process. And during that time of that in between, God really kind of taught us a lesson that parenting is very difficult. And for these teenagers that are in foster care, these young adults that are about to step out into the world, they may not have the greatest view of a family structure. They may have hopped around from house to house. They may have lived in residential facilities with other kids from hard places. And we thought that we could kind of come alongside them and not really be parent figures, but almost be more of a mentor and just kind of help them figure out who they are and what their life's going to look like and what they want to do, help to teach them healthy habits and healthy coping abilities. And so when we originally were getting licensed this time around, we first said that we wanted to do teen moms, and I think that is still on our hearts. We still want to do that. The opportunity has not presented itself, but we know that is something, speaking about parenting being really difficult. I mean, imagine a 17-year-old in foster care who has a 3-month-old baby with no idea what they're doing. And that broke our hearts. And we were like, we can do something about this. We've seen what it's like to parent now. And we felt that God really taught us that lesson in parenting and that we needed to help in that area. So we're definitely open to that. And that was the original thought of teens. And then we said, well, why don't we just do teens altogether? Because they're getting ready to, like I said, step out into this life that they don't really know much about. Maybe they've had to be adults in their past life. Maybe they had to raise siblings in the house because a parent wasn't present. But they may never have been fully on their own, dependent upon only themselves for everything that they need. So we thought that would be a really cool thing for us to do.
And that's cool. And like we talked about earlier, family is so important to you, and you have seen the benefit of having extended family around you. My husband and I often think like we have been given wonderful families. We have been given people who, we have grown up in loving homes. It's like we can offer. To whom much is given, much is required, right?
Right.
That's neat. So when you kind of made that decision, like who was the first call? What was it like bringing in someone?
Yeah. So, we got several calls beforehand, so before we were licensed, we actually got a call about a teen mom. And, they ended up placing her somewhere else that was closer to family. That was very helpful for her. I don't know how she's doing now, but, that was our very first call. And we were like, oh my gosh, this is what we signed up for. This is why we did it. And then it didn't happen. And we were like, a little bit bummed out, but we were so grateful that she ended up in a home, somewhere else. So, we get the call about our current foster daughter that is in our home now. And she, is 18. And, I told you this earlier, she's about to move out into some independent living on her own. And so that call that we got originally was, hey, we have this 18-year-old girl who's, moving from another foster home, and we really just need a place for her to stay for 2 or 3 days because we're getting ready to transition her into a group home. And so my wife and I kind of look at each other and we're like, oh, this is like a cool little like trial period. We get like a 2 to 3 day, we get a 2 to 3 day try at this to see how it goes. And, after that call, I think it was like 2 or 3 days before she actually came to our house, and, the caseworker comes in. It was the weirdest experience. You hear stories about, children going into care and what they bring with them, and, just like the overall attitude and demeanor, and everything happens so fast. It was like, hey, okay, we're going to do this. And then show up at our doorstep. She comes in with her stuff, goes right upstairs. And, my wife and I kind of look at each other like, should we go up there? What do we do? And so we decided that we were going to, we were like, let's just wait and, she can come down. And my wife is amazing. And at her job where she works, she does a lot of trauma training and things like that. And so she has helped educate me more than I can even imagine. But one of the things that she did is she got a little basket with some snacks, some art supplies and stuff like that, and wrote a little note. And the note really just says like, hey, welcome to our home. I'm Josh and Emily, and if you have any questions, let us know. Feel free to make yourself at home. Just ask us if you have any questions. And just left it really plain and simple. And so I remember the caseworker was still there, and she brought that note down and showed it to him. And it was just like a really cool, to see her. She had like a little smile, and, now we cut up all the time and laugh and smile. And, but it was really cool to see that first little smirk of she came in, had her hood up. You could tell she had just come from maybe a rough home. And so it was really cool. And to be a part of that. And so our thought, again, she's going to be here for 2 or 3 days. We started to question the caseworker and say, does she, why is she going to a group home? And so they kind of explained the situation to us. And we're like, okay, well, my wife and I talked about it, and we said, hey, you know what? If she brings it up that she doesn't want to go to the group home and that she wants to stay here, let's maybe advocate for that. Let's talk to her about some of her plans, see what she wants to do, and then move on from there. And so, I think it's 9 months later now. She's still in our home, and it'll be a 10 months that she's been with us before she actually goes out independently. So it's been a fun ride. It's been all the emotions you can think of, the ups, the downs, the off tracks, the on tracks. I could probably tell you stories for hours, but ultimately to see how God has placed us here, and for her to be, and she's really been a blessing in our home. Having the two little ones, she helps out from time to time. She'll come and ask us just a random question off the wall. She'll make fun of me because I tell dad jokes and wear goofy shoes and jeans. But overall, awesome. It's been so great and such a blessing, again, having her in our house.
When did you feel like, or did you? I know that we're an adoptive family. We were a foster family for a time. We also have a teen living with us right now who is not biologically ours. And we're actually, very similar. She came in February. So we're just at 11 months with her, though we knew her beforehand. But was there a time that you felt like, I wish we didn't do this?
Yeah. So, they talk about the honeymoon period and how, it's all nice and well, and they're learning the home. And, I don't really remember how long that lasted. And I'll say we still go back to that time, that kind of period from time to time. But it was probably about a month or two. It was like 2 to 3 months in where, there was a difficult situation that happened. And I just remember laying in bed with my wife after that and being like, this is really tough.
Yeah.
Like, are we sure that we're equipped for this? Like, I don't know that we wanted to be like completely out of it, but we definitely questioned a lot of stuff. And so we're like, well, should we have done teenagers? We're 30 years old. So it's like, we're only 12 years older than her. Like she probably has maybe friends that are our age, I don't know. She has friends and family that she looks at that are our age. And, are we really best equipped to have teenagers in our home and, provide them with the things that they need to be a success? And so we definitely went through those times. And, I think even now I have days where, you question it. And the biggest thing for me in that is my wife and I are in constant communication about that. So we're always talking about it, but also I have other foster dads that I talk to that, they come from that kind of same perspective and mindset as I do. And so that's been really, really helpful for me and kind of getting away from those feelings. And, eventually they always go back and, I go from, I love this, I want to have 10 teenagers in my home to, I don't want to do this anymore, I'm done.
Totally. Yeah, I get that. And I think that's just important for people to hear, because the reality is when you step into hard and you step out of your comfort zone, it's hard. And there are times we regret it. And it's for us, there's been plenty of times all throughout our journey of like, why did we do this? Why didn't we choose the easier? And yet at the same time, you're like, no, I don't really want the easier. I want to be obedient to the Lord. And I do love these kids. And I am thankful we get to do this. But the feelings are real.
Yeah. And and they're strong, really strong at times too. It's usually not like a mild feeling of, maybe we shouldn't have done this. Like if you look at some of the story, you're like, maybe I should buy that. Nah, maybe not. It's like a real, I don't know why I did this. And so
hopelessness sometimes.
Yeah. Hopeless. Like, why did, and, I just said this actually the other day. I said, I don't know why God burdened my heart for foster care, because it's so difficult. And like you said, when you step into these hard places, we have to remind ourselves that it's not going to be easy. And obviously we knew that going in, but some part of you always hopes that it's going to be, perfect scenario, perfect situation. And, it rarely is.
Right. And it's not for the kids that join us either. I mean, they are completely, everything in their world is changing. Like everybody has to. I know that she has had times too, and we've talked about it, where she's like, I don't know why I'm here. Like it's not like we're the only ones going, I wish I didn't do this. I think often the kids sometimes are like, I wish I wasn't here.
Yeah. And, kind of going off of that, and maybe it's a little bit of a different topic, but I will never forget when she actually, caseworker left, she came down at night. Both of our little ones were in bed, and we just started talking. And the question that she asked us, she said, why did you guys say yes to me? I'm a runaway. And that, I was not prepared for that question. It broke my heart to think that this young female has in her head that she's been told probably that she is a runaway, that she's worthless, that she doesn't belong in a home, that she belongs somewhere else. And so, my response was probably not, something that I would probably redo it if I could say it again. And so I just said, you are you. You're not a runaway. Like, you being a runaway doesn't define who you are. And to us, we don't look at this packet on you and judge you. Like that's not what we do. And just like God does to us, he's not like, I'm not looking at all this sin and all these things in the past. Like this doesn't define you. What defines you is what you do with that and how you move forward. And so, we just talked to her about that a little bit, and, her mood maybe lightened a little bit, but, she came in hot with that question, and I could, those heart dropping moments, like I felt that in that moment. And my wife and I talked about it afterwards, and I cried. I couldn't help. And I get like goosebumps right now thinking about that moment, because it was so powerful, and it just reminded us that this is why we do this. This is why we've stepped into this difficult place and decided to be with children from hard places and help guide them to where they want to be. It's not about us.
Yes.
It's about what they want. Success in my eyes is going to look completely different than success in her eyes. And so that's one of the things we've always told her too. And that, anybody that fosters teenagers, I would encourage them to do this, is listen to what they want to do. Help them in the ways that they want to be helped. Because, if she doesn't want to learn how to budget right now, I really want her to know how to spend her money and to budget and save. But if she doesn't want to do that, I'm not going to focus on that. I need to focus on the connection with her. And that's been, one of the biggest lessons for me. But yeah, I will never forget that question.
Wow. Yeah, I think about how when our kids are little, we are pretty much controlling their lives, rightfully so, right? When they're a baby, we have to do everything for them. As they get older, as our kids have turned into teenagers, and especially even like we have one who is an adult now, you become a coach. You're not in charge of their decisions anymore. And even for our 18-year-old, it's been a little bit hard for her. She'll ask, like, what should I do? And I say, you get to choose. I don't want to choose.
Right. That's not my choice.
You're an adult now, and I can coach you, but ultimately at the end of the day, you choose. And so I'm just thinking the same. If we bring in teenagers and we try to treat them like we treated our toddlers with that kind of control and parenting, it is going to go really poorly.
Yeah, that's not what they need. They need connection more than anything else. And they may not have had that. And so, again, going back to my wife and the things that she has taught me, she, that's not the way that I grew up. My parents did a great job raising me, but, and I thought they were really connected with me, but, I see myself being very intentional with that connection and a lot of things. And even in times of, discipline or times of guiding and structure, it's still important always to focus on that piece.
Yeah. Would you say there's any kind of things that stand out, maybe that come to the surface of things, if you said, this is what I've learned so far through this journey?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is I've learned that I need to let go of control. It's one of my biggest.
That's a good one.
It's one of the biggest. It's one of the biggest things that I struggle with myself, is that I love to be in control of situations. If I'm driving, if we're in a car, I'm driving, things like that. If we're,
are you a backseat driver when you're not driving?
Oh, yes. You could ask my wife and she would say absolutely, or anybody that I drive with. We'll be 5 miles out from an exit, and I'll say, "Hey, don't you want to get over to the right lane because we have to exit in 5 miles? You want to?" She's like, "Are you kidding me? I'm gonna get over."
That's awesome.
I'm the worst backseat driver. If I'm in the very back, we had drive a minivan. I try to stay looking at my phone or something because I'm like, I just can't pay attention. But that's one of the things that I have learned, is that I am not in control. And especially with fostering teenagers, and you just said it a second ago, they make decisions on their own. They're not my decisions. They're not my decisions to make. It's not my right to make them for them. It's theirs. They own those. And so, looking at, all of these things that she has gone through, and, with things like school, if she does or doesn't do her schoolwork, sure, I can ask about it, but I'm not in control of that. And so, that's probably one of the biggest things, is that I've had to, they say let go and let God. And literally over this, last 10 months, I've said it, to some friends, that I have prayed probably more in this past 10 months than I ever have in my life, because, I've had to let go of so many things. And it definitely is painful to let go of control, because then I don't have a hand in the outcome. And, that could be a pride thing for me. It could be that, maybe I just think that I'm more educated on whatever it is. But at the end of the day, if the outcome is a success in her eyes and I didn't have control over it at all, that's hers. And she knows that. And so the victory that she gets is way, way more sweet than if I was involved in it. So that's such a huge lesson.
That's awesome. Yeah, we get to be cheerleaders, and we get to help cast a vision for them that maybe they can't see on their own. But ultimately they have to own the decisions. If they want to fail classes, or if they, all of those things. It's on them. And especially these older teenagers that we bring in, it's like independence is coming very quickly, and you've lived your whole life pretty much independent, right? Most of them, right? Because they've had to. And so for us to come in and think, now we're going to turn you into a mini me, that's not the goal. That's not the end all be all.
Right. It's not like, well, when you get home from school at 3:00, from 3 to 5, we're going to have homework time.
Totally.
If I told her that, she would look at me like, I am not doing that. You are not going to make me sit here and do my homework.
Yes.
And she's right.
Oh, man.
I can't.
No. And honestly, even as our kids get older, it's a lot harder. And they have jobs and they do this. It's like when they're little, you can kind of create some of those structures easier. But once they get older, it's different. It's just different.
Right.
I struggle with control as well, especially when I get stressed out. It's like I want everything in order, and that's when I start getting a little crazy. I'm like, okay, everybody turn your phones off, and from this time to this time, nobody's doing anything except we're talking, And my husband's like, okay, just calm down.
Right.
Just calm down.
Yeah, I love it.
Josh, would you say there's any common misconceptions that you have heard about teenagers that you would like to debunk?
Yeah, I think the first one, and is really a part of our story again, is the runaway thing, or anything in their past, violence, whatever it may be. I wouldn't take everything that is, in their history at face value, because a lot of it has to do with the environment that they've been in. Maybe they were in a group home with 6 other guys or 6 other girls from really hard places, and they made bad decisions together, or maybe they got in fights, or maybe they decided they were going to run away, or they were going to steal something, whatever it may have been. A lot of that is because of their environment. And so that's one of the things I think quickly that I would say is that don't take everything that they have at face value. Take it for kind of like look at their timeline and see where they were and, at that time and say, this could have been because of this. And we always try to assume good intent over bad intent because, well, one, it's just really helpful to do that in any scenario because then you come from things more curious rather than already having your mind made up about what's happening. And so that's definitely one of the big ones. And, another thing in that is that they, for us, we've just had the one foster daughter, but she's really fit into our home really well. And, she's learned how our family operates. She doesn't always participate in everything that we do. If we're going over to a family's house, we give her the option. We say, hey, we're going to go over here for a pizza night. Would you like to come? And so, another, I guess, misconception I would say from that is the fact that they don't have to be with you every second of every day. Kind of like you said earlier, their decisions are their own. Let them make those decisions. You don't have to do every single thing for them. And so, and we've seen a lot of fruit come from that. And, it's been very helpful for me to step back and give the reins. Like I said, I'm a control freak, but when I kind of stepped back and gave those reins and said, hey, do you want to do this? Do you want to do that? And started giving the choice, it was way easier for me and less stressful because then it's like, I didn't have a hand in that outcome. The outcome was because of whatever it is. And if it's a bad outcome, well, we'll figure it out together if you want to, or we won't. There's a lot of freedom in that and letting letting God kind of take it from my end and say, God, I'm going to pray for these decisions. And we're also going to let her make her own choices. So those are definitely,
I think freedom is a big thing, or what you're talking about. I understand that because it's freedom in not allowing what they do. And this goes for any of our kids, really, but allowing what they do to define us, right? It's so easy to think, well, if they do that, then it will look bad on us, which is a very self-focused and incorrect thing to be thinking. But also if, for example, with the going over to family, you don't really want a grumpy teenager over with family anyway. So if they don't want to go.
It's like, I'm not going to force you to go because if you're not going to have a good time, then why not just stay back and,
Right. Or if you need a moment, again, moving into, our home, we have 8 kids. So moving it into a home with 7 other siblings, like, that's a lot for all of us. Right. We all need breaks from each other.
Where can I go to be by myself?
Exactly.
I guess I'm going to go to the bathroom.
Exactly.
That alone time is so crucial. And that's one of the things too that we've realized in, talking about family, if we have family over anything like that, and maybe she doesn't come down for dinner, or maybe she is up in her room the whole time and doesn't say hi or doesn't say bye, they get really concerned about that. They're like, why? And at some level it makes sense, right? It's like, there's somebody in your house. Like, that's how I grew up, is that if family comes over, everyone comes down. Everyone's here. Everyone does what they're, supposed to do. You eat, you laugh, you have fun. And so what they're not realizing is there may be so much going on in her head mentally. She could be thinking about, she could have been thinking about school at that time, or she could have been thinking about her transition out on her own, or, trauma she's had in the past. Maybe she's up there and she's just really sad and she doesn't want to be around a lot of people who are happy. And for them, for our family, they don't understand that all the time. And so, not that they attack us with these questions, but they're like, why don't you text her, or why don't you call her and tell her to come down? It's like, no, she knows you guys are here. And if she wants to come down, she will. And if not, you'll see her next time. And so
Yeah.
that's one of the things that we've kind of seen through that, and again, it's the education piece of it. It's the fact that, everyone is born into a certain family and does things a certain way, or maybe that's just how, she was raised, where if family's over, it's totally fine to sit in your room, and that's totally okay. And so, yeah.
I think I just think releasing the pressure on us to, again, be in control of the outcome is what I'm hearing from you over and over. And I would imagine she feels so peaceful living in that environment, because the pressure to perform is off. She can truly be herself for maybe the first time in her life.
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome.
And it's so cool to see some of the fruit from that and letting her make her own decisions. And even with simple things, she gets her hair done every now and then. And we have done some ridiculous things. And one day she goes, I want to get my hair done. I want it to be pink and blue, and I need you to help me dye it. And so I've never done that before. And it was like, okay, let's do it. And so that was early on. And so I did definitely try to take control of that. I got it. And I was like, no, I'm like, oh, you're doing it wrong. Let me get in here and do it. And guess who ended up staying up all night, making sure that it was dried before the next day? This guy.
Yeah. Was that worth it?
It looked great. So maybe, but at the same time, no, it was not worth it. It would have been way more fun if I had let her kind of take that over. But yeah, it's so great being able to do things like that. And, we've seen just a lot of fruit come from that, and a lot of creative, things come from that, from her. And it's been really awesome. That's
awesome. I love it. Well, Josh, this has been a great time talking with you and learning from you. I know it's really special to hear from foster dads, because it's not as common to hear from foster dads, right? Just to talk to foster dads. And so I would love it if you just take a moment to talk to other dads, other guys who maybe have thought, I could never do this. What would you say to them? And then I'm going to ask you a second question is encourage your fellow foster dads too. So let's start talking to the guys who feel like they can't, or maybe just don't want to, or haven't thought about it. And then we'll finish with some encouragement.
Yeah. So for the dads that were like me, that are hesitant, maybe your wife brought it up and she's like dragging you along in this process, I would encourage you to get that education, right? To start learning a little bit more about it, and to think in your mind that you don't have to, maybe you're already a parent and you kind of parent the way that your parents do. I think thinking differently is helpful in that, because maybe a lot of times, the children that are coming through these foster homes, they may not have had a positive male role model in their life. So you could potentially be that first one in their lives. And so the opportunity for that, you shouldn't skip out on it just because you don't think that you can do it. Because, and I've talked to my wife about this, and I don't know that everyone is cut out to be a foster parent, but I think getting that education and learning more and being open-minded about it will kind of let you in on if that's something that you want to do. Mm-hmm. So for the dads that are hesitant, and for the guys out there that are already parents, and maybe you have an open room in your home and you're willing to take in a child from a rough place and help kind of guide them in their path, I would say get out there, connect with your local foster care agency or with your county, and figure out when these pre-placement trainings are, and maybe take an orientation class or get to know a little more about it, or, learn a little bit about how trauma affects the brain, and then move from there. And then I think from there, you'll see that it is something that is very worth your time, and that, you could have a hand in. Maybe you're not a foster dad, but maybe you get involved in respite care, and maybe you're like, you know what, I don't want to do this full time. I don't want to have a foster child in our home maybe for a year or 2 years or longer, but for a weekend or something like that, I think we could definitely provide a safe home for these children. And so I would definitely encourage the guys that are out there thinking about this or being dragged along, like I said, go get that education and really, really think and pray about it.
That's great. And then finish, with encouragement to your fellow foster dads.
Yeah. So foster dads, I think that a lot of times, if you're married like me and you have a wife that gets a lot of education from a lot of different places and a lot of different foster moms, I look at that and I get kind of jealous sometimes, right? I'm like, man, I wish I had all of these places with all of these foster dads that I could reach out to. And I'm definitely involved in a couple of those. But the biggest thing that I would encourage you to do is get connected with other foster dads. Because I think you'll realize quickly that the hard times and the hard things that you're going through, you're likely not the only one. And though it may be a unique scenario, maybe there's just an absolutely off the wall thing that you're dealing with. And, it's one of those case by case scenarios that you just have never heard of before. Maybe there's still somebody out there that can relate to that in a different way, that could provide a different perspective. And again, I go back to education, could help teach you different ways to deal with that. And so for dads out there that may be thriving, find a foster dad that's struggling. And for dads that are out there that are struggling in this and want to quit and don't want to foster anymore, then find some of those dads that are thriving or get connected somewhere where you can reach out and, again, just have somebody to talk to. Because a lot of times I will talk to my wife, and like I said before, she may not always understand where I come from as a man. And, I think a lot of times it really, they talk about like, well, that's hurting you because it's your problem. And I think it really is. Like a lot of times I talked about control, and I think my pride gets in the way a lot of times with that. Control and pride are kind of tied hand in hand. And so, I think that laying that pride and that control aside and reaching out to someone or reaching out to your agency and getting connected with other foster dads and just saying, hey guys, I need help, and really asking for that. I think that you'll find a lot of fruit come from that. And, you will be in a better position and more equipped for the future to be able to parent future children that are in your home.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I know also just it's what you're saying about being humble, being real, because Satan loves to keep things in the dark. And so there might be something that happened in our home with a kid or whatever, and we feel like this is the worst thing that could ever happen. Nobody would know. And you say it when you're around foster adoptive parents, and if you're willing to share like what's going on, so often I feel like the response has been, oh yeah, been there.
Right.
And it just relieves some tension of like, okay, I'm not alone.
Right. And yeah, that feeling of loneliness is so difficult, especially,
it is.
Especially I think, I was kind of taught as a kid that if I'm having a problem or something like that, just suck it up. Like, you're a man, you're going to get through it. Like just leave it inside. And so it's really just recently that, I've been learning about my feelings and things that I have inside and really letting my emotions out. I talked about crying when our foster daughter first came into our home. It's okay as men to be emotional, to ask for help, and to need things. And so just like you said, when things stay in the dark, that is when Satan is thriving and he's at his best. And when we bring those things to the light, God can help redeem those situations and can help, claim victory over those things. And so we have to get it out, talk about it. And just like you said, someone's going to be like, oh yeah, yep, I just dealt with that last week. And you're like, really? Well, how? What did you do? Because I want to know.
Totally. Or I can do you one better.
Yep, exactly.
Your kid got suspended. My kid got expelled.
Right. And then you're like, dang, okay, well, I'm good. I'm good then.
Oh, man. Well, Josh, seriously, thank you so much for taking the time to share with us. Thank you for your heart and for being willing to continue to learn about yourself and be educated. And we're all better for this conversation with you today. So thank you.
Thank you so much. And I appreciate the opportunity to be on here and speak from a foster dad's perspective. And I'm so grateful for your time as well. So thanks so much for having me.
Well, I hope that today's episode encouraged you wherever you are on your foster care journey. We want you to stay connected, so be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you will never miss an episode. Also, we have great content at theforgotteninitiative.org. Thank you for watching. I cannot wait to be with you next time.